Hello, I'm Susan Horwitz, Director of Sport New South Wales. In this program, we continue to focus on the ideas that have shaped corporate and sporting leaders and explore what led them to make changes in the organisations they run and in their own lives. Today, I'm talking with the New South Wales Minister for Sport, the Honourable Stuart Ayres, the key influencer of sport in this state. As well as running the large sporting portfolio, Minister Ayres is also the Minister for Western Sydney and the Minister for West Connex. It's great to have you here today. Welcome.
It's great to be here.
These are three pretty heavyweight portfolios you're running, Minister, each no doubt with their own levels of complexity. Does it ever feel like you're running three large business enterprises all at the same time?
I think that's exactly how it feels like on most days. And being able to move from one portfolio to the next, to switch off a part of your brain and turn on another section is probably one of the biggest challenges. But since I became a minister, I've pretty much been a multi-portfolio minister. So I think from my early days as a minister, I've had to learn those skills of being able to create little compartments for all of the information and shut one down and open one up at relatively quick speed.
Does politics complicate business, the business side of things?
I think politics is always part of what we do. I always strive to get the politics and the policy landing at the right point. And if you tend to get the politics right, you get the policy right, it tends to work out in the end. You've also got to make sure you bring your stakeholders with you as much as you possibly can. Even though there will be people you know have a different point of view, getting the information out there so they understand what you're trying to achieve is still important, even if they're opposed.
So do you find that each portfolio requires a different style of leadership? Or I imagine running sport in this state is very different from running West Connex, for example.
Well, sometimes the challenges are very similar, actually. You've got a complex group of stakeholders, people on different sides of the argument, often a lot of passion. So some of the challenges are very much interchangeable, just the characters and the actors change.
So how would you describe your style of leadership?
I'd like to think I'm a pretty consultative leader. One of the things that I always try to do with the teams that are close around me is empower them. I'm a big believer in having a high quality, diverse team with different experiences being able to be thrown into the melting pot, but giving those people an opportunity to really bring their skills to bear. As a leader, I think the one thing you should try and avoid to do is try to do everything yourself. What you want to be able to do is empower the team to make good decisions, give them a supportive environment where they can go away and do what they're very good at. Hopefully you've employed good quality people, so you should back them in to do the jobs.
I think you're right, because with leaders who are micromanagers, it's very hard to keep good people.
Yeah, there's always going to be times where you have to intervene on a particular issue or an action item. Sure. You might have to react quickly and take some action. But along the way, you've got to make sure that you're giving as much influence to your team as possible, particularly if they're out representing you or your organisation in the community, on the political stage. They need to know how you're thinking, and you need to empower them so that they have a very clear idea around what their roles are.
If we could just focus back on sport for a moment, just how big a business is sport in New South Wales? Are we talking billions and billions of dollars? I think we are, aren't we? Yeah,
absolutely. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Whether you're talking about the value it contributes to the New South Wales economy just through economic visitation, so visitors, tourists, people coming to our city, the role that it plays in driving local economies in and around our major sporting infrastructure, all the way through to how important it is for driving a healthy, active lifestyle, which is also a very big business as well.
Now, in your role as Minister for Sport, you've become very well known as a passionate supporter of all the codes. What is it about sport that inspires you?
I love its capacity to reflect what's happening in life. I'm often find myself saying in speeches and at community events that sport is one of those great areas in life that teaches you so many lessons. It's one of those few places where we're not afraid to talk about winners and losers. There's a scoreboard in sport. When the siren goes, someone wins and someone loses. It teaches you how to be humble in victory, and it also teaches you how to reflect on a loss and how you might be able to go away and improve on what you've been able to achieve. And in many cases, if you don't get the result that you want, how do you go away and improve yourself? Often, particularly team sports, it's the first time you're relying on someone else to drive the outcome or the performance of what you're involved in. You're not the sole determining factor in how the team performs. You've got to change your game so that other people can improve their game and then the whole team benefits. So I think there's a lot of lessons in sport that can be used across business and just life in general.
Yeah, sort of real life skills, I think, aren't there? So what was your favourite sport when you were growing up?
I played a lot of Aussie rules. So I love cricket, I love rugby league, I can watch sport, hours and hours on end. But the sport that I played a lot of was Aussie rules.
Are you still playing?
No, I don't play anymore. It's probably the one thing I miss more than anything else. I played a couple of seasons when I first got elected to the Parliament, but the workload probably just got the better of me. And so, I don't play competitive sport on a regular basis anymore, but and it is the one thing I miss the most.
How do you keep fit? Running between portfolios or something, no?
No, I think it's definitely an important thing to think about, for people in very, very busy roles. You've really got to take responsibility for how you look after yourself. And if you're not exercising as much as what you'd like to, then you definitely have to change what you eat. It's a fairly simple equation, energy in and energy out. And if you're putting a lot of energy in and you're not exerting a lot of energy out, the weight will go up. But if you're not exercising, just reduce the amount you're eating, and what you eat is important too.
Well, as you know, gender equality in sport is a significant issue. And I recall you saying a few years ago about accelerating the pace of change in representation of women in sport. And you said then, if I quote, "If it's going to be, it has to be me." So I have to ask you, what was the light bulb moment for you about gender equality?
Well, I think it was just a sheer reflection that there was 50% of the population that wasn't getting the same opportunities as the other 50%. And if you're the person responsible for driving participation, improving the quality of facilities, and improving the high performance outcomes for sport in New South Wales, I felt I had to take some personal responsibility in driving that change. So whether it was appointing women to boards that I oversee, whether it was about starting to talk about the changing nature of sports infrastructure, something as simple as asking your club whether you have a facility that's appropriate for women to get changed in, could change dramatically the way you think about women involved in your club. I got very, very lucky actually as someone who was participating in sport. The local sporting club or AFL club that I played for decided very early to have a women's team. So I think there's probably a personal experience about what it meant to have a change room allocated to women. How did you structure the fixturing? How did you create the volunteers and manage the club administration to allow a women's team to come on board? So I got a very practical early insight into that. The other thing that I was always supremely confident on was that the quality of women's sport would continue to improve. The speed at which even a sport like netball is played at now, if you watched a game of netball from, say, 5 or 6 years ago and compared it to one of the national competition games now, it's just extraordinarily faster. That means it's more skillful, and that's drawing more people in. And you could see that trajectory a few years ago, at least I felt I could.
In the corporate world, women have 23.6% representation on the ASX 200 boards. In New South Wales sporting organisations, it's 30%, which is really positive. But both are still a long way short of equality. Why do you think it has been so slow and in some cases so difficult to get women into the top executive positions?
I don't know that I've got a clear answer on why it's been slow. I think people talk about unconscious bias. I think that probably plays some role. But I think really the crucial thing for me, particularly around getting stronger representation of women in leadership positions, you've got to start really early. I talk a lot in my own team about pipelining talent and identifying young, talented females to get into positions of junior leadership roles, giving them an opportunity to learn and really sticking with them, particularly through what I might describe as the 25 to 35-year-old age bracket. You've got to support women through that age period, and if you do that, their capacity to deliver big dividends back to your organisation over a longer period of time, I think, are profound. I talk a lot about the diversity that exists in a sporting team. You know, if you're playing football, you don't put out a team of all forwards or put out a team of all backs, and you've got to have a diversity of body shapes and sizes and positions and skills on the sporting field to get the right outcome, to get the win. The same thing exists in the corporate space. If you've got 10 people in your team that all look the same, all think the same, all have the same background, all have the same skills, you're not going to be as successful as a team that's diverse and brings a broad set of skills to whatever task they've been allocated to. So I think teams that are diverse and bring that diversity of skills to bear probably perform better in the long run.
And similarly in business, I think as one senior male champion of change said, if you can't get women into roles, it's either a problem within the organisation's culture or their way of recruiting. What do you think?
Oh, I completely agree. You have to take responsibility for the culture that exists in your organisation, and if you're only attracting men, then that's probably a good opportunity to have a look in the mirror, I might say, and the answer probably lies there. And then I absolutely concur with the idea around recruitment. You must inject changes to the way you conduct recruitment. I've also discovered over a period of time that men are more likely to over-apply for jobs, perhaps above their skill set, and think, I'll have a crack at it and see how far I get. Whereas women often take the opposite role. They've got great skills, but they don't think they're qualified for a role, so they pitch to a lower level. I think the role of a leader in business and in sport is to identify that there might be a bit more talent there than what the individual thinks and foster and nurture that talent.
So it's a sort of a mentoring role too, isn't it?
I would think that anyone in a leadership position should have mentoring their staff as almost dot point number one on their personal job description.
Interesting. Now the good news. We've been waiting a long time for women's sport to start to get the visibility and the media recognition it's been enjoying over the last couple of years. And it's just great that it's happening and that you've been a big supporter of that. How long do you think it will be before all top female athletes are fully professional and earning equal dollars?
I think we've got a way to go, but we're definitely heading in the right direction. Some sports have moved faster than others, and we've seen sports like cricket, which have been, I think, doing a fantastic job at increasing the pay and conditions for female cricketers. Other sports just recently have struck their very first collective bargaining agreements with female athletes. So we're definitely heading in the right direction. The other thing that will happen with the increasing professionalisation of female sport is the quality of the sport will get better. It's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you train, the better your performance gets. The better your performance gets, the more people want to watch sport. The more people who want to watch sport, the more opportunities for revenue generating, i.e. sponsorships and endorsements. All of those things come one after the other. And we're definitely in what I think is a period of exponential growth when it comes to women's sport. And my big message, particularly to corporate Australia, is that you can actually choose to continue to drive this growth. And it's a simple brand association question for me. What are the values that your organisation holds dear? What are the values that you want your customers to think about? And then ask yourself whether you would be better off associating yourself with some of the fantastic female sporting teams to reflect that brand. I think more often than not, you'll find a female sporting team out there that drives that brand message home to your customers, and that's what we want to see people supporting sport and doing. And if they do that, it'll spend more time on TV, and then it just continues to drive itself.
And the sporting grounds will be full. I mean, the stands like the Matildas just recently.
Yeah,
sell-out crowds, lovely to see.
Indeed, you want people in the ground experiencing sport at the venue. The in-venue experience is so crucial, but you also want people watching it on TV as well. You want people watching it on their iPhones, watching it on their tablets.
Yes.
You know, we want people consuming sport, and that broadcast arrangement is still going to be an important revenue driver. I've got no doubt the landscape around media is going to continue to evolve and change, and sport will play an important role in that, but someone's got to be watching it or listening to it for someone to pay for it.
So I'll have to ask you though, do you think equality in those areas will happen in my lifetime. I'm not very old.
I think we will get. I think we will see women's sport continue to grow, and I think it will grow at a rapid rate. I don't know whether we will get to an exact equal dollar for dollar position in many sports. A lot of it will be generated by the amount of revenue that they can generate. And in many respects, I would also offer a word of caution here to sporting administrators, as there's a strong passion to establish national women's competitions. It's really important that you've got enough revenue in your sporting code to sustain those in their early days. So starting small and growing strong is much better than starting with a big bang and whimpering out because you can't sustain the effort. We want what we've seen in the last couple of years not to just continue, but to get much stronger.
Thank you, Minister. Wonderful talking with you.
Fantastic to be here.